Hello, Malcolm here, and welcome to Tuesday Teaching Tips, episode 285. And today's title is a question, and the question is: teaching and personality, toxic or necessary? Toxic or necessary? There's a lot of talk about personality today, television personalities, famous people, and there's a lot of question about how much the personality of a preacher and teacher matters. One definition of preaching is truth through personality. A lot of truth in that, because it's got to come through a person. And my personality is different to yours, which is why we need to listen to different speakers, because we're different persons with different personalities, and we interpret and live and understand God's word differently and express it differently, as we are different people. So there's nothing wrong with that. But what about when personality becomes too big a thing? We see this in church history. We've just finished the latest module of teaching on church history for the Athens Institute of Ministry, UK and Ireland. We had a whole day this last Saturday on church history, trying to cram 2,000 years into one day of teaching. And one of the things that comes across very clearly is how significant personality is, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, but how often the personalities are what drive the theology rather than the personalities being just a channel for the theology, for the teaching. And I wonder whether we think enough about that in our preaching and teaching. For example, Andy Bowachi did a tremendous class on the Reformation, and he was talking about Luther. And of course, Luther is one of the premier personalities in church history, and a lot of good comes from that, and perhaps some not so good. But Luther himself did not want it to be about him. He said this in his Admonition Against Insurrection in 1522. In the first place, I ask that men make no reference to my name. Let them call themselves Christians, not Lutherans. And again, in the same year, in another writing on receiving both kinds of the sacrament, he said, by any consideration of body or soul, you should never say, I am a Lutheran. He didn't want that. And yet what do we have today? The Lutheran Church. Is that good or bad? That's for somebody else to debate. But sometimes you can't avoid it. There's something about personality that lives on, and we've got to be a little careful about how we use our personalities. I've been listening to some old podcasts of Doug Jacoby's, my friend, Old Testament characters. And I listened to one on Moses today, and I thought it was fascinating as he points out not a contradiction, but an interesting thing to think about, which is that, of course, in Exodus chapter 4, he tells the Lord, I'm not eloquent. I can't be your spokesman because I've never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and tongue. Exodus 4 verses 10 to 12. And God gives him Aaron. And of course, that's problematic in some ways, because Aaron turns out to be not as reliable as Moses in many ways. But it's interesting that Moses says that about himself. And then when Stephen is talking about Moses in Acts chapter 7, verse 22, Stephen says this: Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians and was powerful in speech and action. Powerful in speech and action. So here's my tentative conclusion on this, and I'm going to leave it to you to think about this and what it means for you and how we marry up this reality that we are personalities and truth comes through personality, but we want to use that for good and not ill. We don't want to start some new church with our name, and yet we want to be an authentic channel. So what does that mean? I'm going to offer this to you. I think that in Stephen, what Stephen's saying there is that the way that Moses was powerful in his speech was because his actions matched his speech. I don't see a contradiction between Exodus 4 and Acts 7. When Moses says he wasn't eloquent, let's accept that. He wasn't eloquent, but it doesn't mean that he wasn't powerful in his speech. Maybe his speech wasn't as polished as Aaron, fine. And polished speech can be useful, it can be not that important, but I think the thing that really matters is that his actions and his speech seem to work together and match. And as such, he was useful to God in his speaking, in his teaching, because of that. And that was more to do with his character than his personality, can we say? Not to diminish that personality is significant, because we're all different, but it was the character that made the speaking effective. So is that what we need to be thinking about? What do you think about this? Love to know what you think. So please drop a comment anywhere you hear or see this recording and leave it publicly so that we can learn from each other, because we learn best when we're learning in community. And talking about community learning, can I give you a little plug to encourage you to sign up for the Athens Institute of Ministry for the UK and Ireland? You can do the church history module, which we just finished teaching if you like, even if you weren't there. All the recordings will soon be online in the next few days, and you can do the course anyway, that module. Or you can join us for our next module, which is Old Testament Survey, coming up on the 4th of March 2023 in Watford, where I am. Anyway, details in the show notes on that. If you've got a question, drop me a line, malcolm@malcolmcox.org, or you can go to the website, malcolmcox.org. If you'd like a free copy of my ebook on spiritual disciplines, and sign up for my newsletter at the website. If you know anybody that might benefit from this, please pass the link on, subscribe, hit that notification ding bell, and in the meantime, keep calm and carry on teaching. Take care, and God bless.